It's not a question of money, it's a question of how much. Funding for the Department of Defense is always a contentious issue in Washington's budget battles. In these economically difficult times, the Pentagon budget is certain to be an inviting target for cost-cutting. The United States simply doesn't have the financial muscle to be the world's policeman any longer. So the question is, how do we fund our military to meet the threats facing our nation? And what are the threats? If we prioritize the threats, most national security experts agree terrorism does not top the list. Last spring, Director of National Intelligence James Clapper stunned the Senate Armed Services Committee when Senator Joe Manchin asked him, in his opinion, which countries pose a mortal threat to the United States. Clapper said Russia and China. Chairman Carl Levin was stunned, saying he expected to hear Iran or North Korea. Levin gave the Director of National Intelligence a chance to change his answer. He didn't. Senator Manchin decided to ask one more time.
Which country represents to you that has the intent to be our greatest adversary? Has the capabilities? I know you've gone through it, but who has the intent?
Probably China.
China.
A few months later, Senator Jim Webb, a Democrat from Virginia and a former Secretary of the Navy, was on Meet the Press and likened our military relations with China to a pivotal moment that led to World War II.
We are at a point in the South China Sea right now where we are approaching a Munich moment with China, and it's not being discussed.
The Munich moment Senator Webb was talking about was the late British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain's futile attempt to appease Adolf Hitler in a conference in Munich. The Munich Agreement set the stage for the Nazis to begin their march across Europe, which ignited World War II. Senator Webb warned of a Munich moment with China in the South China Sea. That admonition has implications for current and future Pentagon budget battles.
The Navy is at the center, or should be, of our political debate over the defense budget.
A growing chorus of analysts believes boots-on-the-ground land wars are less likely in this century. The next war will be in cyberspace, actual space, and at sea. That's because China seems determined to become a major military power with a blue water navy to project that power. The potential maritime threat from China has been growing for some time. Here's Navy Undersecretary Robert Wark in 2008 when he was a think tank analyst.
I would submit that we are on a leading edge of a long-term maritime competition with China, which may or may not turn out to be hostile over time. If it turns hostile, someday you're going to see a maritime strategy that looks at the People's Liberation Army's Navy and tells how you're going to defeat it. In the meantime, China is the pacing, high-end threat, and it should guide our competition strategy. This is not making China into an enemy. It's just simple, prudent, strategic planning.
Some say China's military buildup is being demonized by defense hawks looking for an excuse to spend money on the Defense Department. Let's consider some facts. China has developed the DF-21D anti-ship ballistic missile known as the Carrier Killer. There's only one nation with an aircraft carrier fleet, and that's the United States. China has tangled with Japanese and South Korean coastal defense forces. This is a screen capture from a Chinese TV newscast. Note the lines on the map behind the news anchor. China is claiming ever larger areas of the South China Sea, and the People's Liberation Army Navy has menaced ships and fishing vessels from the Philippines and Vietnam. A recent editorial in the Global Times, an English-language voice for the Chinese Politburo, warned other nations in the South China Sea to be mentally prepared for the sound of cannons if they don't bow to China's territorial claims. The Chinese Foreign Ministry denied the Chinese Communist Party newspaper editorial represents the government's position. Some worry about China invading Taiwan. Others fixate on China's refurbished Soviet Union-era aircraft carrier, its first. The global security-oriented website Stratfor describes the seas from South Korea and Japan down to Malaysia as Chinese battle boxes. These battle boxes include vital commercial sea lanes. The United States has vowed to defend these sea lanes. The evidence suggests the People's Republic is building an amphibious and submarine force which may set the stage for a forcible takeover of the islands of the South China Sea. The Carrier Killer missile and other weapons point to a strategy of challenging the United States through what is known as area denial. If China can intimidate the U.S. Pacific Fleet to stay out of the South China Sea, they score a clear victory. If China can sink a U.S. supercarrier, the strategic consequences are enormous. Meanwhile, our Navy fleet is declining and aging, and some say it doesn't have the right ships and weapons for future challenges. Right-sizing and right-fitting our Navy will take time and money. Now more than ever, how the Navy is funded in future federal budgets is a vital national security issue. I'm Vince Wade.